Good morning. Today we are going to see section 19 of the Indian Contract Act, section 19 and section 19A. Okay. Now what is section 19? Voidability of agreements without free consent. In each and every topic, like in coercion, in undue influence, in fraud, in misrepresentation, I have told you about the consequences, that is effect, that what will happen if fraud is there, what will happen if misrepresentation is there. What I told you, that the contract becomes voidable. That is option upon the party, that he can cancel it or either he can keep quiet and continue it. But that provision, that is the effect and the consequences of these elements on contract, that is mentioned in section 19 and section 19A. Okay. Now what is section 19? When consent to an agreement is caused by coercion, fraud or misrepresentation, the agreement is a contract voidable at the option of the party whose consent was so caused. Means the person whose consent was caused by fraud, misrepresentation, coercion, he can cancel it or either he can continue it. So here which word is not mentioned? Here they have not mentioned undue influence. Okay. So agreement caused by coercion, fraud or misrepresentation, it can become a contract on the option of the party whose consent is caused by these elements. Okay. Now further it is mentioned, a party to a contract whose consent was caused by fraud or misrepresentation may, if he thinks fit, insist that the contract shall be performed and that he shall be put into the position in which he would have been if the representation made had been true. Means that also I told you in the previous two lectures, that if fraud is there, if misrepresentation is there, the party can insist that okay, we will continue the contract, but I am in loss, I have suffered a loss for this much amount, better give me that amount so that I can be put into the original position, that is the representation made had been true. Okay. Now these things are mentioned first in section 19 and one exception is been clearly mentioned if such consent was caused by misrepresentation or by silence. Fraudulent within the meaning of section 17, the contract nevertheless is not voidable. The contract nevertheless is not voidable. Means the contract, there is no option then on the party. Means the party has to perform the contract. If the party whose consent was so caused had the means of discovering the truth with ordinary diligence. Means I make a false representation, I tell you false things on material facts and all, but you are a person of an ordinary prudent, you should have checked it. If you just a mere thing of activeness you would have been shown, then you could have got the knowledge that I am telling false, or I am telling false but I am telling with the knowledge of truthfulness, like that. Means it is misrepresentation, it is fraud, you should have told me that. A person of ordinary prudence can know it. It means here the contract is not voidable then. Means the contract must be performed. I'll just repeat. If such consent was caused by misrepresentation or by silence, fraudulent, comma is there, fraudulent means fraud, misrepresentation or by silence, within the meaning of section 17. Section 17 is what? Fraud. So in fraud, in silence, in misrepresentation, the contract nevertheless is not voidable, that is no option is there. If the party whose consent was so caused had the means of discovering the truth with ordinary diligence, he could have seen it. So you can't blame me alone. You are also responsible for that. You should have checked it. You should have known it. Caveat emptor, buyer be aware. Though exceptions are there for caveat emptor also. But ordinary prudent man could know that something is wrong in this representation. Then you can't blame me alone. The contract will not become voidable. So you have to perform the contract. Okay. Now one explanation is being given for section 19. A fraud or misrepresentation which did not cause the consent to a contract of the party on whom such fraud was practiced or to whom such misrepresentation was made does not render a contract voidable. Means the person who has given the consent, towards him the false representation should be made. Towards him the fraud or the misrepresentation must have been committed. I'll repeat, a fraud or misrepresentation which did not cause the consent of the contract of the party on whom such fraud was practiced or to whom such misrepresentation was made does not make the contract voidable. I am making representation to some person and you are entering into a contract, means you are not relying upon my statements. So this is a valid contract then. This is not a contract which can be called as voidable. Okay. Now this is section 19 telling about the consequences, the effect, that what will happen if in a contract, or you can say in an agreement, if fraud is there, if misrepresentation is there, if coercion is there. See, if coercion is there, then what can happen? Afterwards, when the coercion is not there, you can challenge it. Courts are open for you. You can challenge it and you can make it, you can prove it that coercion was done against me. Because of that, I have entered into an agreement. I have signed it. I want to cancel it. You can say that. But you keep quiet, means you insist upon continuing the contract. So the contract is voidable. Section 19 is clearly mentioning only three things, that is coercion, fraud and misrepresentation. It is not mentioning here undue influence. It is not mentioning here mistake. Means the provisions and the consequences of mistake are different, which we will see in that topic. Okay, but relating to undue influence, the provisions are mentioned in section 19A. Okay, power to set aside contract induced by undue influence. Means again the option is being kept to the person who has given the consent under undue influence. He can set aside that contract. When consent to an agreement is caused by undue influence, the agreement is contract voidable. Same, contract voidable at the option of the party whose consent was so caused. Any such contract may be set aside either absolutely or if the party who was entitled to avoid it has received any benefit thereunder upon such terms and conditions as to the court may seem just. So here either he can, if he wants, he can avoid the contract, he can set aside the contract. So that is mentioned. The effect of undue influence is mentioned in section 19A. Okay, we'll take an example. A's son has forged B's name to a promissory note. B, under threat of prosecuting A's son, obtains a bond from A for the amount of the forged note. If B sues on this bond, the court may set aside the bond. Okay, but he has to ask for that. If he has to go in the court, he has to pray for it, then the court may set aside the bond. Okay, I'll just repeat the example. A's son has forged B's name to a promissory note. Got it? B, under threat of prosecuting A's son, obtains a bond from A for the amount of the forged note. If B sues on this bond, the court may set the bond aside. Because B is there who can prove this, and if he wants, he can cancel the contract. Okay, this is mentioned in section 19A relating to undue influence. The effect of fraud, the effect of coercion, the effect of misrepresentation, the effect of undue influence is the contract becomes voidable. Here in 19A also it is clearly mentioned. The agreement is a contract voidable. Same thing is mentioned in section 19. The agreement is a contract voidable. Means from section 19 and 19A we can consider that if coercion is there, undue influence is there, fraud is there, misrepresentation is there, the contract becomes voidable. Mistake is not mentioned here. Okay, mistake what is mistake, what are bilateral mistake, unilateral mistake, and what are its effect, that we are going to see in the next video. Okay, bye bye, see you.